Well, hello again. Here we are today with another exciting episode from the Crotchety Old Men podcast. Hi, I'm Gary Smith, one of the co-hosts. By now, y'all ought to know that. We've been around for about 3 years, so this is the last time I'm going to sign on saying I'm Gary Smith, because you got my name right there on the daggone.
Starting off crotchety.
You know what? I'm starting off crotchety. Well, happy February after the weekend, after Valentine's Day. Hope everybody sent love and good well wishes to those they love and those that love you. Hey, with me today, of course, is our host. You already know who he is. He's George Crawford. He's the chief operating person that runs this Crotchety Old Men podcast. And so top of the day to you, George.
Top of the day, Dave Smitty. How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing amazing. 10 toes down, and I'm still around.
That's what we gotta be.
Amen. So, just be happy and grateful for our wealth, health, and prosperity, man. Grateful, for everything we have going on in our lives, freedom and certainly the opportunity to live life to the fullest and hopefully help others do the same. So, what are we going to talk about today, George?
Well, Smitty, we're always talking about follow the money. So, I stumbled on something this week, which was interesting. In the news every day, I don't think you can look at the news without it talking about immigration. And, I started thinking as far as it's not just, picking up individuals on the street. It's just not about protesters. There's a lot of stuff going on in the background. And if you hear this, we're in Minnesota, then we're moving to another city, and you started thinking about how are they supporting this? Because if they're, arresting 100 here, 300 here, 1,000 here, what's happening to these people? They call them detainees. And you remember, they're not convicted of a crime. They're just being picked up and detained. So they have to be detained somewhere. So I started doing a little research, and I found out there was a couple of companies that are big, major players. One is called GEO Group, and it's a multi-million-dollar company. So I just thought we'd chop that up and kind of put out some facts for the people and let them understand, because, we hear about what's going on, but we don't often hear about why, the cause and effect, and who's really making the money, and how this machine, and that's what I'm going to call it, is basically churning, based on the human capital. So let's talk about that today. Immigration and the money behind it.
Man, the money behind it, the money in it, and following the money. In that vein that you're speaking of, man, the noise which captures our attention. I always call it the noise because it serves more of a distraction from what's really going on behind the scenes, as you're saying there. Sure, we see the protests, and certainly it's emotional to watch that sort of stuff, how, people are being abused, and, worst case scenarios in which people are being literally murdered or slaughtered in the streets. And it's disturbing. And we could go on and on that. That could be a whole topic in and of itself. But we have to make sure that we look at things with both eyes open, if you will, and have our ears open too, and close to the ground, man, and what's going on. Yeah, this is a distraction, but hey, every distraction that comes, in my opinion, from Pennsylvania Avenue, is geared toward money. As a matter of fact, just to be blunt about it, like you said, follow the money trail, and you'll identify why something is going on. And so when you brought the subject up, and we started looking at investigating it, and there's that company, GEO Group, and there's another one, CoreCivic, I believe. These companies specialize in housing humans. That's really what it comes down to. I think you said it best, George. These people are not convicted criminals. Mm-hmm. I mean, they haven't broken any law for the most part. Now, the noise is that all these criminals that come from Venezuela and wherever they come from. But what you're also doing is that you're extrapolating a lot of the laborers and a lot of the workforce that, quite frankly, helps run America. Now, it's going to be interesting to see on the other side of this thing how this all pans out and what it does to corporate America. And importantly, more importantly, small business America. Because let's all think about it. There's a lot of people from, and I say Latino descent, but it could be from Asian, it doesn't matter. Because according to the ICE, the immigration law, whatever, anybody that's not born and raised here in America is a foreigner, right? We look at our history, man. America was primarily built on immigration.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Say to that, man.
And what, you know, and staying on that particular point as far as what's going to happen, I was reading an article the other day down in Texas where they were building a lot of homes. Now all of a sudden it's just come to a standstill because they're literally groups of patrollers, you know, ICE coming into where they're building home, and they just arrest the whole construction team. You know, they say pick up everybody.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, some of the builders have put fences around because I guess there's some type of protection law that says if you can't come on private property, but well, heck, they got to go somewhere and eat. They got to go somewhere and sleep. So when they leave that property, they're still, you know, could be arrested. So that alone, that, you know, we're already talking about the housing industry, you know, how it's hurting. There's not a lot of homes to be purchased. Well, now there's not going to be a lot of homes built because a lot of the labor is being picked up and housed. And the interesting part about it, and this, I think what really got my attention is that just talking this one group, the GEO Group, they're a $2.6 billion company. Billion. I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. And to be just putting up a warehouse and, like you say, all the ancillary things that comes along with that. But I mean, they made, what was it, Gary, 100 and how much per day?
100. Now, I want you all to listen to these statistics. These are factual numbers that we've got. $165 per day per person is paid to these private companies. Now, there's been talk about rounding up at least 1 million people a year. But a lot of these warehouses, let's call it, because they're, like George said earlier, they're warehousing human capital. So you're not sentenced for years or months or whatever, but for every day that you're housed there, and they may keep you for 5 days, 3 days, 10 days, or whatever, until they decide to release you, or until they decide that you did not really actually commit a crime or whatever. It's like oops, we arrested you. We're sorry. You can go now. However, for every day that you are in there, and let's call it custody, because you don't have the freedom to leave, so you're in there in custody, the government is paying $165 a day. Now, the last time I checked, there's 30 days in a month. So if you multiply 100,000 detainees by $165 per day, that's $1.6 million a month. No, is it a day, right? Yeah, because
we're still on the day.
We're still on the day. That's $1.6 million per day. Now, y'all, those out there that like me, I like the numbers. So, as a matter of fact, I've done it for you. So, if you don't have a calculator, I've got to share this with you. All right. So, you're talking about $165 per day per person. All right. Now, you multiply 100,000 detainees in each one of these warehouses. I call them warehouses. They have them all over the nation, pretty much. They have about 180 of these centers. Now, of course, we could take this thing even further and multiply all that. But I just want to keep it simple. 100,000 detainees at $165 a day equals $16.5 million per day. Let that sink in. $16.5 million per day. Multiply that by 30 days. Now we're at $495 million per month. Of course, we'll take it one step further. How many months are there in a year? 12. You multiply that by 12. We're at $5,940,000,000. Let's call it $6 billion per year.
Yeah, and that's our money.
That's our money, y'all.
That's our money. That's the money that was approved through this, what they call the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
So yeah, that money was already allocated. And, just think about it. They have the warehousing. That's the operation of the detention centers. They also provide electronic monitoring and supervision. And then they also provide transportation. So here again, there's other costs. And I think we talked about, they provide the beds and they provide the toothpaste and they provide all these other ancillary things that cost money, and it just goes on and on and on. And then on top of that, so they're making money from the government. That's money coming in. And these are publicly traded companies. It's on the stock market. So now from investors like you and me, it may be in your portfolio and you may not even know it. But here again, they're making money there too. So, I mean, this is a huge wheel, of a financial machine that they've created here. And it's running, and it's going to run for a long time.
Take a look at this. Now, the Department of Housing, Department of Homeland Security, there you go. Because the Democrats, as I understand it, they decided not to fund Homeland Security. That didn't stop anything because there's a special fund in the beautiful bill that allocates $45 billion to fund this thing. Mm-hmm. I just shared with you that they're making $6 billion a year to operate this thing. That's just from one source. Now look at the ecosystem that's been created, or the supply chain that's been created from this. We just said there's 100,000 beds per facility. Well, those beds are not like the beds that we all sleep in, that you and I are all accustomed to sleeping in at night when we go home. We're talking about, at best, a little aluminum cot, all right, with probably a mattress about the size of your pinky finger and a pillow. But there's some companies that's out there that manufacture those cots, that manufacture those pillows, to George's point, the toothpaste and all the other ancillary things that goes on in that. So that creates a revenue stream for those companies. Now, stay with me. DEI was pretty much eliminated as far as getting government contracts. So if you're an African American, or if you're anybody of color, getting a contract to supply the cots, to supply the beds and all that kind of stuff, you're probably not going to get in that door. So you missed that if you wanted to be a participant in this ecosystem. So you can see all the other ancillary monies that are being driven and is being dispersed to companies, whether they're small companies or publicly traded companies and private companies, that you don't even get a chance to participate in. If you wanted to be a contractor, chances are your chances are slim to none, because they're not going to give you a piece of that action. So here's some more money that's coming through, not counting the 165 that's coming out of our tax dollars. You see where this is headed, y'all?
Yes, man. It's just amazing how, we're being bamboozled, really. I mean, that's what it is because, when you, like I said, when you turn on the news, all you hear about is immigration and protests and things like that. But we're missing the money. I mean, they're in the background sitting, happy and making the money. So yeah, you can go out and put your signs up. And I'm not saying and that's what we've got to do. We've got to put pressure, on the government, because of the fact that they've already passed these bills. This money's already been allocated. But we've got to put pressure, and then we also have to put visibility. Everybody should know about this. I hope everybody listens to this podcast and listen to these numbers, because this is eye-opening. We're always talking about waste and abuse. Government's always talking about waste and abuse. I mean, this is waste and abuse to the highest. I mean, we're paying for this on a daily basis. Come on now.
Every day. And then you hear the thing about there's not enough money for affordable housing. Well, George, you brought up a really good point earlier today, where they're going to construction sites all across the country, arresting people who are, chances are, they're from other countries or whatever, who does the labor, who does the work, your carpenters, your masonry workers, all these people, construction workers. Now you talk about, it's a domino effect to the housing crisis. Not only are they not going to be able to build affordable housing, you're not going to be able to build high-end housing either. If all your workers are put into a warehouse for 5 or 6 days or 10 days or whatever to make that $165 a day. So this is just more than what they show you on TV. All right, with the, God forbid, certainly it's horrible to see people how they're maimed and all this kind of stuff. We all know the story because we've seen the visions. But we have got to stand up and let our voices be heard with our pockets, man. Who you're voting for, where your money is going, who's paying for this stuff, who's really, really footing the bill for these atrocities that are just putting us deeper and deeper into this spiral, man, of division. Oh my goodness, it's mind-boggling. I just paused right there. It's mind-boggling.
That's what it is. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the things that they want us to know about are the things that you hear about in the news, but we don't dig deeper into seeing what's really going on and how money is being spent. And how the government is being run. I mean, these are things that are being perpetuated over time. And there's, so many people that are invested in all of this stuff. I mean, this is an industry. This is an industry like the car industry, the steel industry, and now it's the people industry. They're making money off of this, and can immigration be fixed? Yes. Congress can fix immigration, but they obviously have chosen not to because, the Republicans right now are controlling the House and the Senate. They can easily pass a bill that's going to fix immigration, going forward. But this is too big of a moneymaker for them to step in and do this. This has been going on for years.
Man.
For years. This is not anything that just started. Like I said, we're talking about billions and billions of dollars.
There's a phrase in the world, in the business world, called forced multiplier. This is an extreme example of forced multiplication as a force multiplier in terms of making money. I mean, when you look at this, I mean, really with your financial headsets, and ladies and gentlemen, we really have to start thinking more with financial. I ask for all those who pray or whatever, pray for wisdom. Pray for wisdom to understand, all right, what's going on in this world. For those of us that own land, or for those of you who own property in many of the rural areas, this is where ICE and the warehousing companies, well, I shouldn't say ICE, I'm talking about the CoreCivics of the world and the IHKs of the world, and of course the GEO Groups of the world, and all these private prison systems and its companies. They're looking for rural areas where they can build more, I call them warehouses, prisons, all right, where they can, just same way with the data centers. All right. Well, let's stick with this situation that we're talking about right now. Rural areas. There's many of African-American people out there today that owns thousands or hundreds of acres of land. And it has timber on it, or it has probably someone's got weeds or rock. Doesn't matter. If they haven't already, they will be coming, probably knocking on your door to either try to get you to sell it. My advice to you is not to sell it. Lease it if you must. But don't be hoodwinked and bamboozled about selling your rural land. If you're not growing anything on it, shame on you. If you're not harvesting the timber or whatever, shame on you, because that land should be able to produce an income for your generations and generations and generations. Because as we all know, our ancestors paid the price, and they either willed or passed along that land with the intentions of that land staying in the family. And so if you're divided siblings, some live in the state of Washington, others live in Toledo, and somebody else live in New Jersey, and you're talking about, well, just sell it and give me my piece, please stop that ignorance. Keep the land, because they ain't making any more. And once you sell it, the price will go up and you'll never be able to afford to buy it back. They're looking at these areas. If you do your research, don't just take our word for this. Go do some research, all right? And go beyond Google. Do some actual research and look at where these properties are being put up. Okay, look where they're looking at, and look and protect yourself and protect your generational wealth. Because if you sell your land, again, we see the gentrification in our cities. Where there may be, it used to be in the hood, they call it the hood, it's just our neighborhood, but they put a negative connotation on that, like the hood is some horrible place to go to or whatever. And that is no longer the case. It would never have been the case if we had the wherewithal and the means to protect it and provide for it. But let me be brief with this. Our land is our wealth, y'all. You hear me on this. Our land is our wealth. That's why property ownership is the gateway to wealth. Owning your home. There's an old saying, if you own a Land Rover or a Land Ranger and you still have a landlord, you're doing something really wrong. Okay? So you want to make sure that ownership, and I want to say this sincerely, especially as it comes to real estate, because that's where the wealth is, and that's where these companies are going, and they're gobbling up these properties and this land banks and this stuff like that for this purpose. And you're being blocked out. So, hey, let's think and grow rich.
Yes, yeah, and Smitty, we also have to look at, how can we, I guess, fight, against this? Because one of the things you have to realize that every commercial building, every residential home has certain restrictions as far as what it's built for, the type of industry or type of business that can be supported in that, in that particular building, especially commercial properties, so you can't just put any kind of business you want. So what they're doing, I think you sent me an article the other day about in Michigan, they just purchased a warehouse. It was probably something to do with an automaker before, but they purchased it with no real reason or stated as to what they're going to use it for. But now, as a citizen in that area, you've got to be looking at the purchase, who purchased it, if that information is available, but then what they propose to use it for. And if it is for a detention center, you have to make sure that the rating of how it's rated in that area, as far as what industry can be in there, is under that umbrella. Because you can't just put anything in there. You can't house individuals. It may be some restrictions. It may be too close to a church. It may be close to a school. It may be too close to a liquor store. But these things, if that's the case, have to be voted on by the citizens in that area to change that rating on how it can be used. And that's your sword against this. That's how you fight against this. Even they can't just come in willy-nilly, build, buy one of these facilities and use it how they want to without the approval of the citizens in that area. And you have to be aware of that, and the same thing with data centers, because of the pollution in the air and things that it can affect. We have to be aware that we do have tools that we can work on against this. But if we're not knowledgeable enough as to what's going on, then it continues to just happen. And we're sitting back going, wow, ooh, and grabbing our signs and protesting.
Right. And keep this in mind, too. Once they acquire these facilities, they become federal property. Well, federal property, they don't pay property taxes in municipalities. That's one of the biggest things that was happening here in the Romulus area, about what George was talking about in the acquisition of this building. I think it's a 200-some-odd-thousand square foot box. All right. That was once a tax generating entity that was there. It was I think it was a tier automotive supplier, whoever that was there operating a legitimate business, paying taxes for that community that helps provide services and things for that community. So now think about it. So yeah, they're in some of these rural areas, but then they're also putting some of these things near other areas, just like they did here in Detroit. They got a daggone prison right here in the city of Detroit, in the city. It ain't used to be prison, used to be out in the rural area. It's right in the city, but does it pay taxes? No, it probably doesn't. I don't know all the tax rates and stuff like that as it relates to those type of properties, but once they become government properties, they don't have the same rules as a private company or a public company in that same particular area. So to George's point, you got to participate in those town hall meetings. You got to show up, okay? Because they're all coming out to try to pimp you for our votes. So we need to know what's going on, man, and get it for ourselves. Don't get it from the news or whatever. Next time there's a meeting going on downtown or around town or whatever, you need to get your butt down there and let your voice be heard, okay? And you'll make your votes count. We have to. This, again, so many, and this is being Black History Month anyway, but every month should be Black History Month. Doggone it. The most important card in your wallet, other than a driver's license and a credit card, should be a doggone library card. Because that's where information is stored. And if you don't have access, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. We can't just continue to be consumers. I mean, we as Black folks are the biggest consumption of any other ethnic group. I mean, we basically buy everything. We create fads. We create, everything that's now, in the generations as far as, what's hip and what's the next thing. But we spend, we buy but we're not buying assets. Okay. We're buying everything that's going to cost us more money, things that are disposable. We got to start buying assets. We got to start doing things that are going to benefit us, create a legacy for our family. And because this is what everybody else is doing around us. We're missing the boat, as consumers. We're the ones with all the credit card debt. We're all the ones with the nice, shiny cars debt. We've got to start being consumers. Like Gary was saying, if you got some land, you better hold on to it. And if it's vacant, you may want to think about building something on it that's going to create some revenue, generate some revenue for you and your family.
That's never, I mean, and we I know it sounds like we're beating the drum, but yeah, we're going to beat this bad boy until somebody gets the rhythm of this thing and understand finances, and it's no excuse for us to be illiterate about anything. I was in a conversation with my wife the other day and was talking about tuitions, and it just hit me. I said, well, you know what? Yeah, tuition to go to schools and things that sometimes can be a barrier of entry for some families. They don't have the tuition to go to school. But when you think about it, tuition is one thing, but most of the college people that I've talked to, graduates, whatever, they tell me that they had to buy the books separately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's
all right.
Correct.
Okay, so you have to buy the book separately, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, mm-hmm. So if that's the case, if that's where the information and knowledge is coming from, those books, then why not just skip over this tuition thing and buy some books?
Say, teach yourself, huh?
Teach yourself, yes, self-education. You never stop learning.
That's true.
Find out the syllabus, find out the books that they're teaching at Harvard. Man, I'm about to give away some secrets here, but I'm not going to do that today. But doggone it, you can get you a degree without having that little onion skin paper on your wall about anything that's taught at Harvard, Dartmouth, Stanford. I don't give a hot chocolate what university it is. But online, they have online courses and online things. And you just find out what doggone books it is that is being taught in whatever curriculum it is that you have an interest in. Go buy the freaking book. Don't just read it, study it. Study the book. Get your journal. Do a book report. Take notes. You self-educate yourself on everything that we're talking about and then some. There's no reason for us to be illiterate about anything.
No, that's absolutely the case. I mean, here again, that's, how I stumbled on, the information that we talked about last time about CVS and how much they own in the medical field, and how much they control, our prescription costs. Now it's these groups, that own, basically control the detention business here. So, there's so much information out here that we're missing, because if you're waiting to hear it on the 6 o'clock news, you're going to miss it, because they're only going to feed you what they want you to know. They're going to feed you the who killed who story. Then they're going to fill you the, we're growing flowers over here story. And then at the end of the day, they figure they've done their job. You've got to get in these books. You've got to understand how AI is going to change your life today and tomorrow. You've got to get in these industries and understand and teach yourself, because if you're waiting for somebody to do it for you, it's not going to happen.
Nope. And they begin to find out. That's why they want to extrapolate some history and stuff from the books, all right, to keep you dumb and stupid and broke, all right? And it's time out for that. We can shorten this wealth gap ourselves, because if we don't do it ourselves, trust and believe me, there's no Calvary coming to help you to get it done, all right? It's not going to happen. And so as long as there's books, we're in a data industry. We're in the information age. We've been done with the industrial age. This is a new age, y'all. Okay. It's an age of information. And those who have the data, those who have the information will win this game of life. We must self-educate, not self-medicate. Okay. You need to get off of some of those drugs and stuff. Some of the stuff is being prescribed. You've heard it on the podcast before, get your wealth. Your health. Protect your body, protect your temple and things of that nature, so that we can kind of get off of some of that stuff, because here's again, it's another money grab. We talked about this not too long ago, some money grab with the pharmaceutical agency. We talked about the PBMs and the money that you end up spending trying to stay alive. All right. Well, we have to take the same responsibility and accountability into to keeping our financial lives intact. Okay. Hear us when we say this, man. This information, what we're talking about, is not rocket science, y'all. It really isn't. And hopefully we've enlightened you today about what's really going on with this Department of Homeland Security and this immigration thing and all this stuff. And it all ties in together, but it leads to one direction, to the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I want to make sure people understand that it's definitely an injustice, what they're doing to, the people they're calling immigrants, because of the fact that they're just coming here to make a decent living. I mean, they have the tools, they have the skills, it's interesting, I spent a couple of days in the hospital and every nurse, the multiple doctors were all from someplace else. So you really don't understand. I mean, these people, they impact us every day. This is a part of society. And to take this entity, these people out of society, is an injustice. But the bigger injustice is how this money grab is affecting everybody, and it's being camouflaged by saying, I'm getting all the crooks and the robbers and the thieves. Well, the crooks and the robbers and the thieves ain't at Home Depot. They're not out building homes. They're not walking down the street, taking care of their families. They're not, school teachers, nurses. Those aren't the crooks and the robbers. Okay. So here again, ain't what we signed up for. Those that did vote, because I didn't, for this current administration, you've been lied to, and because this is not happening. It's a totally different thing, and you named it correctly. It's a money grab. That's exactly what it is.
Yep, that's what it comes down to. So I know we could go on and on. Certainly there's so many other things that we could share with you about it, but our time come where we have to get off the horn. But man, it's passionate to me about this, because it affects all our generation. You think your great grandchildren, your children, and there won't be anything, left for them other than some pictures you done stored on Facebook somewhere. And who knows?
Owned by somebody else, owned and controlled by somebody else.
Owned and controlled.
Whoever putting your stuff in the cloud, that stuff ain't yours no more.
Exactly. So, and hey, like most days when the clouds go away, the sunshine comes. So we don't know what's going to happen to the daggone cloud. Okay. And so you got to get back to the mindset of ownership, responsibility, and accountability for yourself, for your own security, safety, and success. All right. We're responsible for those things. We have control of that. And so if you're not in control, you're going to be under someone else's control. So with that being said, George, you got anything else?
No, man, I just got your great words of wisdom we're going to close by.
Well, this is going to come from the mind and the mouth of the late, great Dr. Miles Monroe. And he was certainly a mentor to me, and I'm sure a mentor to millions of others out there to know him. If you don't know him, get that other card in your wallet called a library card, or Google Dr. Miles Monroe. So here it goes. It's real simple. It says, you cannot lead an orchestra unless you turn your back on the crowd.
There you go.
All right. Turn your back on that noise out there and lead an orchestra.
I like that. And as we always say on the Crotchety Old Men, if you didn't know, now you know.
You know. All
Take
right.
care. Be blessed.
See you next time. Peace.